Our Prime Minister's apology included the policy's two main objectives of, quote, removal of children from the influence of their parents and to assimilate them into the dominant culture, indeed sought to kill the Indian in the child, end of quote. What he left unsaid was that many of those designated and trusted as caregivers committed acts so despicable and inhumane that they killed the child in the Indian. Very young children were robbed of their innocence, destroying them so completely that there was no chance for them to know how to maintain their dignity. They never had the chance to develop trust, independence, and initiative, and they were robbed of their self-esteem. Furthermore, as innocence was stripped away and culture was attacked, nothing remained but shame and trauma. That became their self-concept. As adults, they were unable to cope and lived with the nightmares and memories. Do we still in the end have to prove these things happened?
Part of the system of taking over this country was to label us as devil-worshipping Indians, pagans, heathens, savages. Those words that I just stated had a profound effect until today. I tell people it was like a tsunami that came over the land and battered down our social structures. I was hurt at a residential school by evil Catholics. I was hurt by evil white people that twisted my mind, where I was an unhealthy individual for many years of my life. But now we're creating a tsunami that's going to counter that. I tell people today, I have a secret. My secret is I'm going to assimilate all the white people to our way of thinking. Because it's a beautiful way of thinking. It's our attitude is the most important thing. The way we think is the way we're going to act. So we think positive and we think with love and we think of justice in the truest sense, because justice means absolute fairness for all, then we're going to have something in this country. But right now what you have, many children that are not going to finish high school. Many children are not going to go through the doors of the universities because they're afraid of people with white skin. And why are they afraid? It's because of the oppressive communication that's happened over the centuries. I know that reconciliation for our people was righting wrongs. And any time one of our family or our clan done a wrong, that clan paid and paid and paid for that mistake. They had shame feasts. They would cover the people with the wealth of the day to make up for that wrong. That's the First Nations way of reconciliation.
My father, who went to this school, he went to Lejac Residential School. This year he gave testimony, and it's very, very hard to sit there and listen, to the things that have happened. Because they become little children. They become, those little people. And as you grow up, and you try to understand where this is coming, where the anger comes from, and why these things, why you can't have a relationship that you want to have with your father, your parents. And it's because they never learned themselves how to be parents. They didn't learn how to love, because that love was not there. These were not loving places. I'm sure that there were people who thought they were doing good. But there were also people, like Jerry said, who did a lot of evil. And the result of that was generations of men and women who did not really know how to parent, who did not know how to be loving and be intimate in a positive way, in a healthy way with their children. So that's what I see this process as being about, having the opportunity for the younger generations to learn about this, to know about this, and to empower themselves, to have the courage to talk about it then, and to have, because I guess this Indigenous conception about truth and reconciliation, again, I thought about the reconciliation part, and I'm not too sure about it, but I think the truth part is definitely about courage. People who really make things uncomfortable, because I think we have to go to these uncomfortable places in order to create that transformation. But there is also a local hero of mine, George Emanuel. So I just want to really quickly finish with reading a little quote from a book he wrote over 30 years ago, and this might talk a little bit about reconciliation. Okay, I'll try to speak loud. When we come to a new fork in an old road, we continue to follow the route with which we are familiar, even though wholly different, even better avenues might open up before us. The failure to heed the plea for a new approach to Indian-European relations is a failure of imagination. The greatest barrier to recognition of Aboriginal rights does not lie with the courts, the law, or even the present administration. Such recognition necessitates the reevaluation of assumptions, both about Canada and its history and about Indian people and our culture. Real recognition of our presence and humanity would require a genuine reconsideration of so many people's role in North American society that it would amount to a genuine leap of imagination. And I think that's what we need, a genuine leap of imagination.
Reconciliation in its full sense should involve the above, plus the repentance of all Canadians. Since whatever darkness that was committed way back was done really with the consent of the entire population, their vote and their residents. And furthermore, reconciliation between two people's groups implies not just a partial, but a total change and restoration. In other words, if you look at Canada's recent history, you name it. There's the Oka crisis, the shooting of Doody George in Ontario, ramming of the fishing boat in Burnt Church, and driving the Aboriginal, or one Aboriginal out of town in Saskatchewan and allow him to freeze. And then in here you got the Gustafson Lake standoff. Ontario, you just seen the finishing of, unfortunately, the finishing of the standoff at Caledonia. So all these things are not addressed, and if you have to take sort of, just say, you know, the residential school to represent 10% of all the damage, let's just take a round figure. And we still have 90% of the things unaddressed. And so, truth and reconciliation should really refer to the whole and not just a part. Otherwise, it would be deceptive. But somehow Canadians would be deceived into thinking that once this announcement is made, then life would be fine and you guys would be living happily ever after. We need to deal with the root causes of this whole tragedy. In other words, land, governance, domination. And until, you know, Canada accepts the UN declarations of Indigenous rights, I don't think we are really seeing the real thing.